Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live in the studio, and today's guest is Gerrie. Good to see you, Gerrie.
Hello.
Hello, and good, as I said, good to see you. And we've got Scott with us as well. Scott, good to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about mental health and specifically how mental health has affected you and also the impact on your family. So, Scott, maybe tell us a little bit about how it's affected you and your family.
It affected me as in the sense of, obviously we're on a podcast, so I have to, it affected me in a way I never thought mental health existed until I went through it myself. It all seemed like it was a bit of a dream. Everybody used something as an excuse, and it wasn't until I experienced it. It affected my family in the way of it broke my marriage down. It broke relationships with my children. As such, obviously, I wasn't in a mental state to realise and what was going on around me. And I think it broke me as a person at the time, and it definitely damaged friendships, family. Some of my family basically understood it because they were a newer generation, as I say. The older ones in my family, they're from the era mental health. They don't understand it enough, and it broke relationships with certain members of my family. And other ones, it grew stronger, is the best way to put that.
I see. And Gerrie, coming to you, I mean, how would you recommend, or what could you say for individuals like Scott that have had to deal with mental health, number one, but equally the impact on families? What could you respond? What could you say to individuals who are in Scott's situation?
I think what Scott was talking about is the fact that it divides the family.
Massively.
Massively. I think, Scott, you were talking about, some of the guilt that you felt, and that weighed heavily on what you were experiencing. And what do you do with the guilt? Because that makes you and affects your mental health even more when you see that your family are dividing. Some of your family members didn't know how to handle some of the mental health, and how do they support you?
It's exactly that.
Yeah. How do you get over it? How do you, just snap out of it? How do you deal with this? And then some members of your family were, it was affecting them and giving them mental health issues too.
100%. So obviously when we were talking about it, so certain family members have experienced mental health themselves, and I can openly put my hands up. I did not support them because I didn't understand it until I went through it. But because certain members of my family had mental health problems, they knew how to support me and encourage me in the right direction. Whereas it divided the family, where some of them thought I was being selfish. My attitude towards things, or them towards me, I should say, it divided us. Before I had mental, we were close with certain things, and it's kind of like the elephant in the room. With now, like every time because everyone's known I've gone through mental health. I was at my uncle's 60th this weekend. Certain people that have seen my podcast or seen certain things I put on Facebook kind of treat you a little bit different, is the best way to put it. You kind of lose, because there's a stigma behind mental health. A certain member that's known my family for quite a long time, haven't seen them for a long time, obviously see them at my uncle's 60th. That's all they wanted to talk about. It wasn't how Scott, it was, are you doing all right? You're looking good. I'm glad to see you doing stuff for mental health. But it's kind of, it's
there.
Yeah.
No, I get that. And here's a question for both of you. Gerrie, maybe you first. What do you do with the individuals or the camp that say, come on, just get over it? Because you do get that, don't you?
Yeah, you do. But I think you can't do a lot with people. That you can't, re-educate people. I think you're too busy dealing with your own mental health to try and do the re-educating at the moment. But I think for Scott, when you're talking about people with mental health issues, there's you can support somebody with mental health issues,
Mm-hmm.
very much so. You can support someone through anything. It's when somebody's problem becomes your problem. That's when you can no longer support them. You know,
and
you
I felt
can't-
like I did a lot of that. I created my problem, became everyone else's problem.
Yeah. And it's difficult for a family member to support somebody when they having to almost like defend themselves. You can't support somebody other not so much attacking, but, you know, to support somebody while you're being almost attacked or in a defensive role. Yeah. So you're
And that's what I thought the whole world was. I thought the whole world at one point was against me. I saw everything in a negative light. So part of obviously PTSD and bits and pieces I had, I was always ready for an argument as such, because I felt like, just like you said, felt like I had to defend myself on everything because nobody understood it enough. So with my family, it was always kind of, well, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because of my mental health. I'm trying to explain some of my actions and some of the stuff that I've said that wasn't correct. But then it feels like sometimes with certain members of friends, family, that you're always talking about mental health rather than just, okay, he's got a problem. And how was your day today, Scott? And it always switched back. And rather than, oh yeah, like, you know, you come in horse race and you go to the pub, or, you know, what have you done at work today? It always switched back. And certain members of the family just, yeah, well, it is what it is, and I've kind of supported me and just get on with it.
But what can people do, though? If they know you are suffering from poor mental health, it is a talking point. You know, do you avoid it?
No.
Do you meet it head on? Is it the elephant in the room?
It's hard to explain. So, like, my sister-in-law will not mind me talking about this. When she's been suffering with mental health for many years, many years, she has anxiety, she has certain things that trigger her. And in the sense of, as a brother-in-law, I was quite bad. I didn't understand mental health. And I think the first part is to help or just even understand what actually the person's going through. Not that you need to support them. If I knew what I knew now, I would have probably helped a little bit more with the sense of my sister-in-law. I thought it was just an excuse. It just like, oh, she just doesn't want to do this. It's an excuse. She's getting up and leaving when we're out because she's having a panic attack. And obviously I hadn't experienced it. I was like, how selfish is that? You're ruining a family dinner or something like that. And I see it in, she's doing it again. And it wasn't until I experienced what she'd actually gone through do I then go, oh, now I get what you've done, what you did back then.
Is that because you were a sufferer yourself?
And because I came a sufferer. But for other family members or friends and bits and pieces, just obviously if it was more common knowledge or understanding what actually is mental health, it helps a little bit. Because like certain members of the family, because they come from an older generation, they don't understand what mental health is. They just genuinely were not brought up in the era of what mental health is.
I think people fear what they don't understand, so they sometimes attack it. So they minimise it because they don't understand it. And until they've experienced it, it's like yourself. It's like, what is that? That's just it. They push it aside. They don't understand it.
Yeah.
So
But you don't want people to have to experience it to understand it, do you?
No, they shouldn't do, no.
And so what could you do for individuals who are so distant from it? And a lot of people are. They won't understand it because they've not been there. But when they do meet Scott, for example, how would they understand? And what do they do? You know, what do individuals do? Because that's probably the hardest thing for the other side. How do you deal with it?
Well, we're doing it, aren't we? We're talking about it. It's education. It's being able to, you know, get rid of the stigma.
Yeah, because it does come, it's like, sorry, the stigma behind when you say mental health is the first thing, even to me, and I suffer with mental health, the first thing when I say mental health is you're completely some whacked out dude that's going to go around and do some real crazy stuff.
But it also seems to be a bit of a password if you need to get out of trouble.
Yes.
I think, and a lot of outsiders, if I can call them that, will say, well, the easy solution is that person suffering from mental health, days off work, maybe, or any particular problem they might be going through at work or at home. It could be, and I think that's perhaps the wrong, well, I hope for most situations it's the wrong
because obviously
assumption.
With mental health as the journey, I call it a journey because that's the only, I don't know what the word is in the sense of, if you'd gone back certain parts in the last 12 months, I was in a different place mentally. So mental health meant a different thing then to me to what it does now, because I've kind of learnt to control certain things with my mental health. But the thing that I've discovered is every single person in this world, not one person in this world, doesn't have a moment in their lifetime where they feel depressed, happy, sad, up, down. It's when it gets to the point where it's down and you can't get back up. And that's the bit nobody understands. Everyone gets scared of it. Well, you're dragging me down. And just accept it for what it actually is. And you can still be a friend, a family, or do stuff just because you had a moment a year ago. It doesn't mean it's going to happen now, right? Yeah. And that's the bit you've got to kind of just treat people for what it is in the situation at that specific time. That's how I feel about it.
Okay. Well, look, as we bring our podcast to a close, I'm going to ask each of you one question each, and it really is a tip or a piece of advice for an individual who may be suffering, because they may not even know that they're suffering, but for somebody who may be suffering from poor mental health. Gerrie, what tip, what advice could you give that individual who does feel that it is getting to them?
Is to call out, speak out, look for help.
100% agree with that.
Absolutely.
And where would you go for help? What would you recommend?
Obviously therapy, obviously to a doctor, to your friends, family, anybody that will listen to you.
Scott?
I 100% agree with that, because if I'd spoken out then and rather than the stigma about it, I would have been in a different place now. But for me, the advice I would get that works for me is I use sports. I use from doing the gym to walking, bits and pieces like that. That helps me that's a bit of advice. Get out there, get moving, get the blood pumping.
Bit of a distraction.
It distracts your brain. Yep. Obviously, like when I go walking down the canal, obviously you've got the scenery as well as I have the music on. The walking obviously gets the blood pumping, which also helps your mental health. Yeah,
can I just sort of add in? I know you want to wrap this up, but I think the frightening thing is people are becoming more aware that they have mental health issues now.
Yep.
Mainly because of the COVID, that they never realised they had before. That's because we've all had a time warp.
Sure.
And they can't stop because of that distraction. We didn't have that distraction.
Yes, and now it's come to light.
And now it's come to light for themselves because that distraction wasn't there, that work wasn't there.
A lot of people were distracting themselves and not realising they were doing it, right?
So there's an increase in mental health. So the fear has grown in people.
Yes. And
they don't know what to do with it. So more people need to talk out now.
So the sort of final word is speak about it, talk about it, shout out, and let people know in any case.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap that up there. Thanks very much indeed, Scott. And Gerrie, you've been a great guest today in our podcast studio. And hopefully we'll see you all soon. And Gerrie, you'll come back.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll speak to you soon.